Good morning and welcome back to Business Math class. As you recall, we covered 5.2 on our last class session. We talked about the different methods by which we evaluate our inventory. The entire topic in Chapter 5 is the valuation of assets. Assets for a business are things of value that the business owns. Obviously, if you're in a retail business, one of the things of value that you own is your inventory, right? You have a gift shop, or you have Maryland's Uniform Shop, or you have a hardware store. Part of the value of that business is the actual inventory, the things that you have on your shelves that you're hoping to sell in your retail business. If you own a bakery, then the things of value you have are your donuts and your cakes. It's your inventory that's, around at any time. We discovered there are 3 methods by which we're going to come up with the value of our inventory: weighted average, first in, first out, and last in, first out. Before class, we were talking about the fact that problem 21 and 23 caused some grief. So what I'm going to be doing is getting that on paper, and we'll just begin our session next class with that, making sure that everything ties. Some of you are thinking there might be an answer that's wrong in the back of the book. So instead of taking class time, let's just let it sit. I'll get it all worked out. We'll get it both on the tape and on the front of the class in our next class meeting. Is everyone okay with that, or is there a question prior to problem 21 in the homework? Everything else seemed to work right. Okay. Then I'll get that one on a sheet of paper and we'll do it. Besides owning inventory, a business has other assets. We're not going to sell everything we own. Some of the items that a business owns, it uses to be in business. If you are in business, you might have your own copy machine, you might have your own cash register, you might have your own computer. Besides inventory, there are many things that it takes to go into business besides the products that you're going to sell. When we use an item in business, like a computer, for example, through a process of time, the value of that goes down, and we need to replace it. What we're going to talk about today are not the things that we have on the shelves to sell, but we're going to talk about the items that we use in our business that eventually wear out. Okay? I've got a typo on the top of the next page. I've taken a lot of these notes from the last book that we used, and in the last book, Depreciation was in Chapter 16, Section 1. When I did my handout, I did not get that changed. So if you cross out 16.1 and put Chapter 5.3 at the top of that next page, you will be exactly where we are today. We're going to divide Chapter 5.3 into 3 very distinct pieces. We're going to each day for the next 3 times we get together do a different kind of depreciation. Some asset that you own, theoretically at least, goes down in value as it is used in your business. There are 3 ways we're going to talk about to depreciate those assets. The first is called straight line depreciation. The second that we're going to talk about is an accelerated depreciation. We're going to do that in a section we're going to call 5.3b. And the final section that we're going to do is units of production, which we're going to call 5.3c. So do you understand that we're actually dividing 5.3 into 3 distinct different days? I'll tell you exactly which homework problems you can do at the end of each day. The homework is listed at the end of Chapter 5, Section 3, but I've gone through and picked the exact problems that you should be working on each day for homework. So when we get done, you should have all of them completed. When an asset is used in a business, and again, I'm thinking like a Xerox machine, I'm thinking like a mixer, I'm thinking like a computer, yes? The asset loses value, at least theoretically, each year it is owned. And you know that's true. Things wear out. They have to be replaced. So the value of an item goes down. If you, say, owned a bed and breakfast, you know, after a certain length of time, the bedspreads are going to wear out. The drapes are going to wear out. You know, things are not worth as much in a business after they've been used for a certain number of years. We're going to examine two different methods to begin with on how much value it's lost each year. And the third one is called units of production. It's not based on how long you own it, but by how much you use it. So there's going to be three methods in all. Terms that are used in depreciation are summarized here, and they're terms that you'll need to become familiar with, build your vocabulary. Cost. When we talk about the cost of an item in our business, it means the amount that we originally paid for the asset. It is always the basis that we use for determining depreciation. So obviously if we bought something at a discount, we're not talking about the price that it was before we got it discounted, right? If we buy something, we're talking about the actual amount we wrote the check for to pay for the item. That's the cost. It's how much it costs to bring it into the business. Useful life of an item is the period of time that an asset is expected to last. And obviously those vary, right? If you have a computer, for example, how long do you think a computer might have for a useful life? I know how often I've been replacing mine.
3 hours.
Well, maybe not 3 hours, but what, every 3 or 4 years, yeah. So we're going to depreciate computers very quickly because they kind of get obsolete. The software doesn't work on them anymore. Versus if we have some sort of a copy machine, they might be a very durable item that we might get 10 years of useful life out of. So what we're going to do to begin with is come up with an expected useful life. And the useful life is the period of time it's supposed to last in the business before we replace it. Scrap value, salvage value. It's what we estimate the value of the asset is when it's retired from service. Sometimes when we get rid of something, it's not worth anything and the salvage value is 0. But often, and I just bought a new computer and I was able to sell my old one, not for very much money, but it had a salvage value. So you know that sometimes you're able to, a car is a perfect example. Cars can be driven until they are worth 0. That can happen, yeah, transmission goes out or something. But very often we have a useful life of a car, 5 years maybe, and then what happens? The salvage or the scrap value is what we can sell it for used. So that's what scrap value is, what we're going to think we're going to sell it for used. Accumulated depreciation is the total amount of depreciation that you have taken over the entire life that you've had that item. Does that make sense? Accumulated. We've added up all the depreciation that we've taken. Book value, excuse me?
You mean like the amount that you've lost on?
Yes, it's the total amount accumulated over the life. So if we've depreciated something $100 the first year, $100 the second year, and $100 the third year, at the end of 3 years, the accumulated depreciation would be $300. Does that make it? It's a total. It's an ongoing total. Book value. Book value is the original cost that we paid for an item minus all of the accumulated depreciation. It's what it's worth today. It's what you could sell it for. Does that make sense? The book value should equal the scrap value at the end of an asset's life. If we think it's going to be worth $200 at the end, then its book value should be worth $200, equal to the scrap value at the very end. Okay? The first topic we're going to cover is straight line depreciation. I put a great big A on the outside of that because this is 5.3a. We're going to, and again, I've written some steps for calculations, but I think it's kind of wordy. I think what I'd like to do first is go through a depreciation schedule, create one on the screen, then let's go back and read the English, read the words that go along with that. Because I think if you just try to read the words, they don't make as much sense until you see the numbers. I'm a number person first, a word person second. So what we're going to begin with is a piece of equipment that you've bought for your business. It costs $2,250. Let's say it's a computer. Estimated life of 3 years, scrap value of $500. We're down at example 1. Is everyone there? We're going to prepare a straight line depreciation schedule. We're always going to begin every depreciation schedule with the same heading, and you'll need to memorize that pattern, okay? We're always going to have the year, and that's year, 1, 2, 3, 4. It's the year you own it. The next one is going to be this year's depreciation. It's how much we've accumulated, how much we've depreciated it this 1 year. The next is going to be the accumulated depreciation, which is the amount we've depreciated it over the entire time that we've owned it. The last topic, or the last, I can't spell today, I can't spell any day, can I, is book value, okay? So you're going to have those headings, and you're going to need to put those. In the very first year, we call it year 0. That's the year you buy the item. There's no depreciation the first year, there's no accumulated depreciation, and the book value is how much you paid for it. So we're going to start the depreciation schedule saying I purchased an item, and I purchased the item for $2,250. One of the other assumptions that you need to make while we're doing this is that we're buying all of this the first of the year, and we're depreciating for entire years. Partial year depreciation is another topic that has just currently been eliminated. That's one of the sections in here that was 5.4 that's been taken out of the curriculum. So we're going to assume every one of these is bought on January 1st and that we're selling it at the end of the year. So each year is a full year of depreciation. So we're not going to worry if we bought it in August or when we bought the item, okay? Full year. So we are at the end of year 1. And we want to find out how much depreciation that we're doing. We're actually going to depreciate it over 3 years. So you're going to have year 1, year 2, and year 3 on your depreciation schedule. In straight line depreciation, we assume that the asset goes down the same amount each year. And if it goes down the same amount each year and it's going to be at scrap value in 3 years, what fractional part of the asset's value do we depreciate each year? We're depreciating it 1 year out of 3 years of useful life. What do you think that fraction is? Good, 1/3. Let's write down a 1/3 right there. But I want to talk about something else. What if it was that we were depreciating it over 4 years? What fraction would we use? 1/4. And if we were depreciating it over 5 years, it would be 1/5. 10 years would be 1/10. 8 years would be 1/8. You're more than welcome to change that to a decimal when it's nice and neat, like 0.25 for 1/4. Does that make sense? If it's 1/5, it's 0.20. If someone were to ask you what is the rate of depreciation, this would be 0.33 repeating. Yeah? Is that all right? So the amount that we're going to depreciate this is the same amount each year, and it's 1/3 of the value of an asset each year. Can anyone think of anything they own that is not depreciated straight line, that you personally own, that doesn't go down the same amount each year? That's true. A house does not go down, hopefully, yeah?
A vehicle.
Yes, what?
A vehicle.
A vehicle. What happens with a car?
It depreciates real rapidly the first year.
That's right. It depreciates. Right. So we would not use a straight line depreciation schedule for a car, right? What happens in that is that there's more depreciation at the beginning, yes? Then after you drive a car, there's less depreciation, right? That's the topic of our next class session. Okay, it's accelerated depreciation at the beginning and smaller depreciation at the end. This is straight line, the same amount each year, okay? The next thing we've got to decide is how much we're taking times that 1/3. When we're doing straight line depreciation, the amount of money we're taking times that fraction is the total amount to be depreciated. In year 3, what do we think our book value is going to be? $500, that's right. We know for a fact that in year 3, the book value, because at the end of the depreciation time, the book value is equal to the scrap. We know at the end of year 3, $500 in book value. So how much total depreciation are we going to do over the life of the item? Where'd you get that number? That's exactly right. To begin with, on straight line depreciation, you need to take the difference between the original cost, the book value in year 0, and the book value in the final year and say, I'm going to depreciate this item a total of book value in year 0 minus book value in the final year, $1,750. So this 1/3 is times $1,750. And does everyone see where I came up with $1,750? Right. You can go ahead and say my total accumulated depreciation in the final year better be $1,750. My book value in the final year better be $500. How much is my depreciation? I can tell by looking at this screen. This is sloppy. I've got it done very neatly on my paper, though. I'll get it up here in just a minute. How much are we going to depreciate during that first year? And let's just go ahead and do pennies for the time being. 0.33. That's right. Huh?
0.33.
I like 1 divided by 3 equal, and then times 1750. Is everyone getting that? If you have parentheses on your calculator, you can do parentheses 1 divided by 3, close parentheses equal. If you're using that business calculator, it doesn't have those parentheses on it. You can do 1 divided by 3 equal, and then take that number times 1750. Did everyone get 583.33?
Could you divide it by 3 too?
That's the other thing that you can do. He's saying, can I take 1750 and divide it by 3? That's exactly the same. So we're also, since this is straight line depreciation, you're going to see that you're going to get fast. These schedules look long. Straight line depreciation, how much is in the next year? That's exactly right. And then that last year we need to adjust and get that last penny in there. So how much accumulated depreciation do we have in year 1? In year 1, it's exactly the depreciation for that 1 year. 583.33. So what's the book value at the end of year 1? At the end of year 1, you take the original cost, subtract the depreciation for this year,
$1,666.67.
There you go. No, that's 1/6, isn't it? There we go. Okay. So second year's depreciation, since it's straight line, is 583.33, yes? What will the accumulated depreciation be at the end of the second year? It's all the depreciation we had last year plus this year's depreciation. I've got 1166.66. I lost somebody? Mm-hmm. When we do straight line depreciation, every year is the same. So once you calculate it, are you with me? And if we were rounding that, we'd have 583, 583, and 584 right there. I tend to not mind doing pennies. It's easier for me to do them than to round them. Patrick, does that make sense?
Yeah, I got it.
What do you think? Josh, does that make sense?
What makes
Key?
this number?
Maybe
This is your
or yes?
accumulated depreciation, so you take
Ingrid,
depreciation
is that making
this
sense?
year, and you add this year's depreciation, and you get this.
Okay.
So you add this, and you add this to get this.
Holly, are you back there okay? Okay. What we'd like to do then is let you get started on the next one by yourself, and then we'll get it up here. This tool that you own in your business, it can be any kind of a tool, cost $25,000 when you bought it. It has a useful life of 5 years. You're going to need to write small because you only have about 2 inches of paper there. Are you with me? And I write large. I wish I had more room there. You need to prepare a straight line depreciation schedule knowing that the scrap value costs $1,000. The scrap value is $1,000. You're going to start out with year 0 and number 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. We're going to see how this goes. I'm going to scribble on a sheet of paper while you work. We'll see how it goes. There's your original setup, year 0, this year's depreciation, nothing. Accumulated depreciation, nothing. Book value, $25,000. Can I wander? Okay, let me see what's happening here. You having any trouble doing year 2?
No.
Great setup.
Multiply it.
Great setup. How are you doing?
Doing good, thank you.
Let me see what you've got. You got it. Okay. Yes, you've got a good start. You've got the right start. Yes. If you move your comma, you're going to be fine. How are you doing here?
I just don't have my calculator.
Oh, I've got a calculator. I'll get it for you. Just a minute. I'm going to get line 1 up on the screen, and I'm going to finish coming around. You should then be, his line, year 1 is on the screen. You should be coming up with a total amount of depreciation that year of $4,000. Yeah, if you're going to do that, then you need to, this number's the same, so you just want to cross that out. Are you with me? I see what you're doing. You're doing great. That's looking good. Is that making sense? Yeah. Okay, how about you? I would like to talk to you for 2 seconds after class.
Good.
Because we want to get you back on track.
Wonderful.
Cool. Looks like everyone is headed the right direction. We'll take a minute to finish that one. I'll get it up here. The key for straight line depreciation is that you must subtract before you begin. You must take the book value or the original price in year 0, subtract the scrap value, and then come up with the amount of depreciation each year. The fraction, since this is in 5 years, is 1/5. And if I asked you for the rate, the straight line depreciation rate, you would take that 1/5, put it in your calculator and get 0.2, right? So the depreciation rate is, we're actually depreciating at 20% a year. The decimal is 0.2, or the fraction is 1/5 per year. Once you calculate that number and get 4,800, that 4,800 can come down for each year. You're always going to go ahead and put your 1,000 here. Just kind of keep adding those, and then come here and you're each year subtracting $4,800. Keith, is that making sense?
Well, because it's straight line and you do the same thing every year, you can just keep hitting the price.
Once we do the accelerated depreciation and the units of production, we'll talk about how they're different, okay? But To begin with straight line, you must always calculate the total amount to be depreciated and use that number for the calculation. I'm going to tell you we don't do that on accelerated depreciation, and that's when it gets to be confusing. It's kind of like the dates when we had end of month and extra and receipt of goods. You've got to remember the rules for each type of depreciation schedule, and the rules change. Okay? So now let's go back up and look at the words and see if we've done it properly and if they don't make sense. The process that you need to go through when you're coming up with a depreciation schedule looks like this. And you've got it listed. We'll kind of zoom in here and kind of read the words now. It says, in year 0, the book value equals the original cost, and the accumulated depreciation is 0. And that's what's happening. We start out with a 0 in year. Book value is original cost. There is no depreciation in year 0. There's no accumulated depreciation. Step 2. The total amount to be depreciated is equal to the original cost minus the scrap value. You've always got to come up with the total amount to be depreciated first when you've got straight line, yeah? Subtract the book value in the original, or the original cost, subtract the scrap from it. Then each annual depreciation amount is the total amount to be depreciated divided by the useful life, like Josh said, or times the decimal. In the case of 1 year of depreciation in 5 years, it's 1/5, 0.2. In the case, or you can divide by 5. If it's 4 years of depreciation, what would the decimal be? 0.25, or you can divide by 4. That's right. Okay. Repeat this each year, and it says annual depreciation is a constant value. If you're doing straight line, what straight line says is same amount every year. Not true in either one of the other two. And what you're going to try to key in on is the differences. Then it says this year's book value is the prior year's book value with the annual depreciation amount taken away. You're subtracting away each year's depreciation as you come down through the schedule. And in the final year, the book value is equal to the scrap value, and accumulated depreciation ought to be the total amount to be depreciated. Again, we knew we wanted to depreciate $1,750. That was the accumulated depreciation in the last year. If you look at the one you just completed on your own, you knew that you wanted there to be $24,000 worth of depreciation, and that was the accumulated depreciation in the last year. This $2,400 and this $1,000 need to add together to be the original book value. So these should balance. What the homework is sometimes going to do is say, what is the book value at the end of the 3rd year or at the end of the 2nd year? Instead of just trying to randomly figure those out, my suggestion is make your columns, line it up, do a depreciation schedule, and then you can answer the question. If I asked you in this last problem, what is the book value at the end of year 3, the answer would be $10,600. But I couldn't have come up with that number without this schedule. So you understand what I'm saying? The homework might just ask you, what is the accumulated depreciation at the end of a certain year? What is the book value at the end of a certain year? Just make the schedule. And actually on my test, I'm going to ask you to make a schedule for everything. I'm not going to ask you specific, years. We're just going to make depreciation schedules. Yes?
Have that memorized, right? Like the schedule?
Well, just the year, this year's depreciation, accumulated depreciation, book value. And we're going to use those same headings when we do accelerated depreciation and when we do units of production. So it's the same heading for all three. It's the calculations that differ. But yes, you do need to do that. We're not going to give you those titles. And I know on the final, it'll ask you to do a depreciation schedule, one of those 3 methods, maybe 2 of them. And you'll just need to come up with the schedule. But I do know in the homework, some of the places it just asks for what is the depreciation at a certain time. So, how does that sound? Okay, we need to flip the page. We have one more thing we want to do. And it's getting us ready for what we're doing the next time we get together. We were, when it was 4 years, dividing by 4 or multiplying by 1/4. We were, when it was 5 years, either dividing by 4 or multiplying or dividing by, let me think. If it was 4 years, we were dividing by 4 using 0.25. If it was 5 years, divide by 5 or 0.20, right? What we're saying now is, what is the rate? What is the decimal equivalent of that? It says, what is the annual straight line rate if the useful life is 8 years? It's 1 divided by 8, and I want the rate to be a decimal. What'd you get? 0.125, that's right. So if I were asked to come up with the rate is not 1/5 or 1/4 or 1/3, the rate is the decimal. The rate is a decimal. And you get it by dividing by the useful life. Divide 1 by the useful life. Okay, yes?
Could you work number 1 using 0.33 to get your 1750?
Yeah, you won't get exactly the same numbers. I like that one, either taking the amount and dividing it by 3, or
So if you're on a test and you want to use decimals, because I do,
you can. You just do 1 divided by 3 equals. That gives you.
0.33 doesn't.
No, you can't
don't
change.
get
You
it.
cannot do that. You'll have to do 1 divided by 3 equals. That will give you the decimal. Okay. And then you just need to use that. Do 1 divided by 3 in your calculator,
0.33.
but it's got lots more. And then take that.
3333. How many
Right.
more?
Well, then take that times the amount to be depreciated, 1750, and you'll just need to keep it in your calculator. And I can show you how to store that number if you want to in your memory.
How many repeating 3s do you need to get the?
I'm just saying do 1 divided by 3 times. You're saying I want to re-enter 0.33. Don't do that. Just take 1 divided by 3 equals. That'll give you a number. It'll be sitting there in your calculator.
Okay.
Then take it times.
Okay, I
Are you
see.
with what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And I can show you how to store that in the memory. I'll look at your calculator. If you don't want to have to do 1 divided by 3 every time, we can use the memory in your calculator. We can store it, and then you can just recall that number. But no, I don't want you to round it.
Yeah, I just couldn't get it using the 0.33.
Right. And the worst one is when people round it and say it's 0.3. I've fussed at many people who want to tell me that 1/3 is 0.3, and it's not. And really, 0.33 is not close enough. So you either need to take the 1750 and divide by 3, or you need to do 1 divided by 3 each time, hit equal, have that long repeating decimal in there.
And is that only on a repeating?
And I can also show you how to store that in the memory of I'll look at your calculator specifically, but you'll have a memory. We can store that number so you can just recall it if you want to. And I don't know are you using the? Okay, yeah, I can easily show you how to store that number if you want, and then recall it every time you want to use it if you don't want to do 1 divided by 3 equal. But no, we can't use 0.33 and get precise enough answers. Good question. Okay, now on this particular topic, straight line depreciation, you can't do all of the homework, but you can do some of the homework. The homework problems that you should be able to do when you go home today are 1, 3, 17, and 20. Those are the ones that deal with straight line depreciation. You'll see that the homework assignment for 5.3 is page 171, and it lists these problems. So if you go to page 171, the ones that you should be able to do with straight line depreciation are 1, 3, 17, and 20. And you can do them in that order. Then we'll do the accelerated depreciation the next time. And by the time we get done with all 3 topics, you'll have done all of the homework problems. But those are the ones that deal with straight line depreciation.
Question on the homework. That we did the other day.
Yes?
On the even numbers, where it says like the value of the cost of goods sold using the LIFO method, are we going to need to know how to do that?
Let me ask you which problem you're talking about.
Just all the even ones, because like
Oh, no.
we did the value of the ending inventory.
No,
We
we're
did
not
cost
doing
of
that.
goods, stuff like that. We're not going to need to know
No,
that.
no, we're not going to. I understand the question.
Yeah, I
No,
just wanted
we're
to
not
know
gonna do
if
that.
we're ever going to need to know the cost of goods.
I had
No.
a question on homework.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, yes, go
Can you
ahead.
go over number 9 real quick?
Sure.
I mean, I did it, and I didn't get the same answer as the back of the book.
Well, then let's do number 9 together. If you already have number 9 on 5-2, if you want to go ahead and get started on number 1, 3, 17, or 20, and then you've got questions, we'll have time to do that. But I'm going to address his question. I actually have piddled with that one, it looks like, so let me look at it.
732.
Okay. We're doing number 7, is that right? Number 9. And it's on 5.2. In this edition of the book, it is on page 162. Just for the sake of the tapes, I will tell you I think that he's making a new edition, so if someone were watching the tapes later, it might not be on page 162, but it would still be problem number 9 on 5.2. Okay? Number 9 says, find the value of the ending inventory using first in, first out method for the guitar store. Is that right? So we're doing first in, first out on the guitar store. When the first ones in are the first ones out, what guitars are left? The ones that we purchased in September or the ones that we purchased in January? The September guitars are left. How many guitars do we have in stock at this moment? 6. So I know that I have 6 guitars, and the ones that are left are the ones that we purchased in September. So I know that I paid $122 for those. Is that what the book says?
Yeah.
Keith, what happened?
I don't know. Because I did the same thing on another one and came up with the right answer. I don't know.
Okay. The 6 that were left would be the 6 of the 7 that we purchased in September. And so we would have 6 guitars at $122 a piece. Okay? Did that answer your question? Okay. Is there another question on last session's homework, 5-2? Then I think what we can do is we'll turn off the tapes. I'll come around. We'll get you started on those problems for straight line depreciation. And when we get back together, next class session, we'll talk about a different kind of depreciation, and we'll talk about how it differs, what calculations are made differently. Okay?